All right, happy Labor Day to you. I'm Fox 26 meteorologist Remeisha Shade. Let's get an update on what's happening in the tropics and what's impacting your local Labor Day weather across the Houston area. It is going to be most likely a pretty active, pretty busy hurricane month because we have made it to the month of September. Of course, that is typically and historically the busiest, most active portion of hurricane season. So we're hoping we don't go through several more of these names because we have more named storms, but the theory or the forecast is that yes, we are going to have the potential for a lot of these names to be used in September, maybe even into October. So far for this hurricane season so far, we've had 5 named storms from Alberto all the way down to Ernesto. Of course, 2 of those were tropical storms, Alberto and Chris, and 3 of those were hurricanes, Beryl, Debbie, and Ernesto. Of course, Beryl bringing Houston a direct hit. The next 2 names on the list would be Francine and then Gordon. So we're hoping we don't have to use those anytime soon, but of course, it is typically pretty busy during the month of September. We've been concerned about one disturbance, one broad, fairly weak area of low pressure that's basically just been hanging out right off of the Texas Gulf Coast. And this has been something we've been monitoring for the last several days. But here's the good news for this evening. It appears that this area of low pressure will not turn into a tropical system because it is likely going to be jogging a little bit to the north and making landfall by early tomorrow morning. So that 10% low chance that it did have to potentially become a tropical depression or tropical storm has now lowered to a near 0% chance over the next 7 days. So I think by tomorrow we likely would have gotten rid of this tropical system, or at least the potential for it to turn into a tropical system, and we will still be dealing with some rounds of heavy rain, but it is likely not going to become a tropical storm or a hurricane. Futurecast, however, will show you that we will still have bands of rain and a lot of moisture getting pushed up in and around the Houston and Galveston areas due to that disturbance right off of the Gulf Coast. Like I said, it will be moving north, pushing onshore likely for your Tuesday, and that will bring with it likely more rounds of rain. So notice Futurecast around 10:30 a.m. for your Tuesday morning, showing some heavy downpours still near Lake Jackson, maybe up towards Galveston, down towards Palacios, and then farther south and west down around the Corpus Christi area as well. So maybe you're heading back from a long holiday weekend from Corpus Christi or from Austin, maybe San Antonio. You will have a higher shot to run into some heavy downpours for Tuesday morning, even into Tuesday afternoon. Futurecast by Tuesday evening, right around 4:30, 5, 6 p.m., still showing these spotty downpours popping up across the area. So there will be the potential for some of this heavy rain to impact parts of our area. Heading into Wednesday, it's going to be the same story. That Gulf moisture, that tropical moisture still intact and in place. And as we get into the heating of the day, likely we're going to have more of those spotty downpours popping up, especially by Wednesday afternoon and evening. How much additional rain are we talking about? Because down around the coast, some of these spots have already picked up a decent amount of rain. Good news for Houston, I think between this evening and Wednesday, likely less than an inch. How about 1 to 2 inches of additional rain expected to the south of Houston and between League City and the Galveston area, but down around Lake Jackson, maybe parts of Bay City and over towards Palacios, there could be an additional 2, 3, maybe 4 inches of rainfall over the next couple of days before we finally start to break out of this soggy weather pattern. So here's what you need to know. This Gulf disturbance, or this broad area of low pressure that's just been sitting off of the Texas and Louisiana Gulf Coast and just meandering over the last several days, should move over land early Tuesday. So that likely puts an end to any chance for tropical cyclone formation. So that means tropical development is not expected. We will still have, though, the threat for more of those burst of heavy rain with that disturbance even moving onshore. So with that heavy rain potential and with the pattern we've been stuck in the last several days, we do have that increased threat for street flooding. A low 1 out of 4 risk for Houston, Sugar Land, Needville, up towards Atascocita, but a higher, slight 2 out of 4 risk down around our coastal communities, areas that have been hardest hit in the last few days. So that means Galveston, if you're in Angleton, Lake Jackson, Bay City, Palacios, not really going to be the best time for beach time. If you're trying to head out to Surfside Beach, Galveston Beach, you will have to maybe worry with some heavy downpours and the threat for lightning and probably some dangerous rip currents as well. So you may want to hold off on that beach trip for a few more days. Next weekend looking a lot better. Flash flood risk for tomorrow on the lower side for Houston. Notice it shifts a little bit to the south of the Houston area, but still down around Angleton, Lake Jackson, Bay City, Needville, El Campo, there could still be a few flooded streets. Heading into the middle of the week, Wednesday, notice the flash flood risk kind of starts to increase for much of the area. It becomes more widespread. It's still a low risk, but it's just covering more of our communities, and that's because we're actually expecting a summer cool front to come in and start to increase those showers and storms for Wednesday and for Thursday. But any impacts from a tropical system not expected. So like I said, that disturbance hanging out just offshore down to a 0% chance for development now. So now we've got to worry about the next 2 tropical waves that we're monitoring, Invest number 2 and Invest number 3. Here's Invest number 2. It's now made it into eastern portions of the Caribbean Sea, and it is expected to roll right over the Yucatan Peninsula and likely into the southwestern Gulf of Mexico by this weekend. Disturbance number 3 still way out in the far east Atlantic, so we've still got several days to monitor that one. But notice both systems have that medium 40% chance for tropical cyclone development. So you certainly need to keep checking in day by day, as these systems do have the potential to make it maybe into our neck of the woods. In fact, I want to show you futurecasts showing that system currently in the eastern Caribbean by late this week. And this weekend, futurecast has this kind of becoming more developed and into the western portion of the Caribbean, getting close to the Yucatan Peninsula. This is Saturday at 8:30 a.m. So if you have any trips planned right around the Yucatan Peninsula, this could certainly impact that. Right around Cancun, maybe some heavy rain, some strong wind for this weekend. So notice by Sunday, it's still kind of meandering close to the Yucatan Peninsula and then expected to push into the southern Gulf of Mexico late this weekend or early next week. So we've got to watch that one closely, and we've got to watch the tropical wave in the far east Atlantic. We're still expecting a very busy remainder of our 2024 hurricane season. Of course, if you remember, Colorado State University forecasters have predicted above average hurricane season numbers. So for the remainder of the season, we are still expecting a good amount of action. Of course, CSU forecasters predicted 23 named storms for this season. So far, we've had 5, 12 hurricanes. So far, we've had 3, and 6 major hurricanes. So far, we've had 1 major hurricane. That was Beryl when it briefly strengthened to a Category 5. NOAA forecasters still producing that range for their forecast, and they are predicting 17 to 24 named storms. Out of those, 8 to 13 becoming hurricanes, and out of those, 4 to 7 becoming major hurricanes. So notice both of these forecasts are above average for a hurricane season. Normally we have about 14 named storms. So we're still expecting things to kind of crank up, and it could happen pretty quickly. A lot of that Saharan dust that was coming off of the African coast that was kind of hindering development, bringing in dry air, really starting to go away. And we still have very warm waters out there in the Gulf of Mexico, much of the Atlantic, and in the Caribbean, well into the 80s. So if these systems can survive, we're thinking that they will start to rapidly develop. So we are now officially into the month of September, and notice the area of greatest concern for tropical development. That would be parts of the western Atlantic, just off of the east coast of the U.S. It would also be the central Atlantic over to the Lesser Antilles and some of the Caribbean islands. That's where we currently have our next tropical wave that could become Francine. And then, of course, we have a higher than average risk for tropical systems to develop in the Gulf of Mexico for the month of September. So we're going to continue to monitor things closely. Like I said, this is typically the busiest time of our hurricane season, September 10th being that peak of hurricane season. And we've got to get through this month. That's one more month. October and all in November. So we've got about 3 months left. We've already been hit by Hurricane Beryl here in Houston once, and we're hoping that's it. But of course, you never want to let your guard down because these systems can develop and grow rapidly, and they can turn at the last minute. So just make sure that you stay alert and stay prepared.